to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if anyone is filming or recording, please give your name and address to our recording secretary who's on the phone remotely.
Anne Marie Miller. And you know my address enough to send me Christmas cards by now?
You can take care of that. Thank you very much. All right, the board met in executive session on Monday to discuss real estate matters and tonight to discuss personnel and legal matters. As far as citizens speak, we have three individuals that would like to speak. Again, I'd like to just remind you, you have 3 minutes. I don't like cutting people off, but at 3 minutes we will do that. Ms. Darla Bowman, Monaco.
I'm back. I am here again to object to the logo, and I know every time somebody has called here, they've said it's a done deal, but I know that anything can be changed with a vote, and I know anything can be changed if it's put on the agenda. This was not put on the agenda meeting that month. It was added on to the voting meeting at the week between the agenda and the voting meeting, which gave none of the people in this town an opportunity to see it. And I did post it, and I did make a petition, and I got 295 votes here. People who signed my petition to object to what you have done with the branding in this district, the obscene branding you have put out. More black on that thing than anything. And Manuel, who hates black, I was surprised that he would think that would be okay. And so I'm going to present this to you. I would like you to reconsider that. And and I'm going to just say, if you tell me you have printed stuff already, you print in-house, so you have minimal amount of expense there. So I would really like you to think about this, because I'm not the only one. If you read anything online, you would see that I'm not the only one bitching about this. But guess what? Here it is, and I'm going to pass it over to you to put into your minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arista?
You want to say something?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Robert Arista. I taught high school at the high school for 34 years, etc. Because I'm not going to make it too long. I was so shocked when my sister, who graduated from Canon-McMillan, showed me the picture of this creature that you want to put in place of the Big Mac. He looks like, and I'm sorry to say this, a drug addict. That's exactly what he looks like. Now let's get to Canon-McMillan. John McMillan he was both Scots and Irish, and also John Cannon, basically the same. But these two men, let's go to McMillan first. When he came to this area, he was a minister of the Presbyterian Church. He's buried up on top of the hill by the church up there, not this hill, on 19. And he got together, he worked for George Washington. He took care of all his land and took care of taxes and income. And he was interested in education because he got together with McMillan, who was a minister, and he had the first high school and academy or college west of the Allegheny Mountains in our area. And at that time, this area was not Pennsylvania, it was Virginia. And later it becomes Pennsylvania. And they have extended their influence in education and in business throughout this entire region, going as far as beyond where Chartiers Valley is. They even went so far to the University of Pittsburgh to help them, and they were involved at the university that became the University of Pittsburgh. Then when he had an academy, I'm talking about McMillan. He wanted to teach school. He was a minister, but he was interested in only education. So he did that, and then from the school, it went to an academy. And from the academy to a college that he called Jefferson. But because they ran out of money, that is Cannonsburg, because Canon, the Canon who designed Cannonsburg, they ran out of money. They didn't have enough money. So they took the school Jefferson, moved it to Washington, and that became W&J, Washington and Jefferson. Now, having these two men contribute all of this to this whole geographic region, you want to take McMillan. And incidentally, if you look at his picture on the internet, he resembles a good bit the mascot, the shape of his face, etc. And I got hundreds of calls from former students wanting to know what's wrong with the school board. That's all. My time is up. I could go on and give you all the history, but I didn't want to bore you. Thank you.
Mr. Arista. Thank you. Mr. Smittle.
Okay, thanks again for this opportunity, and thank you, Ms. Darla Bowman-Monaco and Mr. Arista for the great work you've done.
Thank you.
It's very impressive getting 290 signed
Thank you.
support.
Thank you.
I think that's twice as much as the survey that was done for this
Absolutely.
logo change. This is like part 2 on transparency. Last meeting, I tried multitasking with doing my own video and speaking. And at the end, I appreciated the response from Mr. Monitis. It has something to do with transparency, taping meetings in the future. It sounded like it was, well, I heard reportedly it was only about audio, and I still recommend good quality video and audio by the school district and posted on the website. And on the great work of this concerned parent who does posting more promptly. I want to respond to I did post it on my Facebook and mostly in support of not changing the logo, but there's always that one, on Facebook who calls you out and makes it personal. This person's called me out, so this is my response. Okay, I'm leaving this post with some closing remarks. To the person who accused me of stirring up controversy and said CM is not known outside of southeastern PA, we are in southwestern PA, and yes, I will stir up all controversy I want when I see something that is not right, just, fair, equitable, and ethical. This change in the symbol of our school and culture that has withstood the test of time is not right for all the above reasons. I didn't earn a CM letter while I was in school because I worked at least 5 hours a day after school. One reason that I worked after school is like many others growing up, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and up until today, mostly socioeconomic and equality and economic disparity reasons. I want to jump down to the end. I posted a picture of the great cheerleaders that have promoted Canon-McMillan in a cheer that I'm sure everybody was aware of. We are the Big Macs, mighty, mighty Big Macs. Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are. So we tell them, we are the Big Macs, mighty, mighty Big Macs. So I don't think we need to change in a logo to tell people who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smittle. Okay, moving on. Eagle Project, Caleb Bauer.
Do you want me to do, I have a board here. all. My name is Caleb Mowry. I'm a senior at Canon-McMillan High School and a Boy Scout of Troop 1313 in St. Benedict's in McMurray. And I'm currently working to achieve my Eagle Scout rank. In order to do this, I have to complete a community service project, and for this project, I would love to benefit the high school. I recently reached out to Mr. Crowley, the principal, via email, inquiring about what might be able to be done around the high school that could use a project, and he suggested a beautification project. As a result, I looked around the school and selected these two plots of mulch in front of the weight room in the front left of the school, and they haven't seen a lot of love in, I'm assuming, a long time, and I feel they could greatly benefit from a beautification project, which is what I've come here to present today. To improve the look of these plots, I proposed the remulching of them, the planting of hostas, and then the placement of garden stones and a garden bench in each one of them. As you can see on the right side of the board here, I made a detailed drawing of two plots and how exactly they would be laid out. The smaller of the two is 10 feet by 7.5, and I would have two hostas on each side, and in the middle there would be 3 stepping stones, which are about 1.5 feet in diameter, and a bench that's about 3.5 feet long. And then the larger plot would have 6 hostas with 3 on either side of 3 stepping stones and a bench. The reason the larger one has 3, the smaller one has 2, is because hostas are about 2 feet wide in diameter, and they have to be planted about a foot apart. The plot that's about 8 foot deep, if you're looking at it facing the school, can barely squeeze in those 3 hostas, while the 7.5 foot one just won't quite be able to. And though there would be a difference there, the relative layout of both plots would be the same, and I think it would still look very nice. The materials I would need for this project would be 40 bags of Scott's topsoil, 20 bags of black mulch, 3 bags of Miracle-Gro, 171 square feet of weed barrier, 10 hostas, 6 stepping stones, and 2 garden benches. The total cost estimate for all of these is $585, but I would likely try to raise $700 to be safe before beginning the project. In order to raise money, I've contacted my former manager at Moe's Southwest Grill in Washington, and she's given me the information needed to fundraise through them by selling their taco kits. Each of these kits cost $50 and feed 4 to 6 people, and for each one I would make $10 towards my project. Additionally, my troop will match any fundraising I do, meaning I have to raise $350 or sell 35 taco kits, assuming that I don't gain any monetary support from my community or getting discounts from different hardware stores, which is likely because many of them are very scout friendly. Upon meeting this monetary goal, I would aim to begin work in late September. Ideally, it would be the weekend of September 24th or 25th, but that's subject to change depending on my fundraising progress, my schedule, and the availability of my volunteers. To carry out the project on these work days, I will transport all the materials in my family's minivan and my neighbor's pickup truck. I will begin by weeding the plots, removing the old mulch, and then covering them in topsoil, digging the holes for the hostras, and then filling them with Miracle-Gro, covering the plots with weed guard, planting the hostas, and then remulching the areas and adding the stepping stones and garden benches on top of them. For the volunteers, my family and a few of my friends have agreed to help me work on this, and I will be reaching out to members of my troop that will need volunteer hours for different requirements or various things, which often you get a lot of return when you reach out for any project. I feel this project will greatly benefit how the high school looks, and it will give a few people a place to sit if they're waiting outside of the weight room or an auditorium to be picked up for a ride or to be let in or anything else. And though it's a relatively simple project, I assure you it will be done to the very best of me and my volunteers' ability, and it will be a great addition to the high school. Does anybody have any questions?
What do you think is the total cost of the project?
The total cost for all the materials, I'm assuming, or I project to be $585. That's I've calculated that. I've done the research and checked the cost of these materials. But I plan to raise $700 to sort of overshoot that, so that we have a little bit of wiggle room, and that'll likely be even less than that number if I reach out to different hardware stores in case they need donations. I find on a deal for a large purchase or something like that.
Very nice. I think it's a great idea. If you need any unskilled labor, give me a call. All right, Jordan, you're up.
All right, good evening, actually. I can have a couple subjects covered tonight. We'll start with the transportation department, and then move into a couple projects that we have ongoing or actually finally completed. So transportation, we had 2 retirements at the end of the last school year. During the summer, we were able to get 6 candidates through our CDL class. So 2 of those candidates are moving immediately into those 2 open positions. The remaining 4, 3 of them are going to go on our sub list, and 1 is going to drive a van, but be available to step into a bus role in the event that we need an extra driver for that day. That increases our sub pool. We also, one of the retirees joined our sub list as well. So that is 4 additional substitute bus drivers that we have for this upcoming school year. We had a total of 3 last year. So we went from 3 to 7, which is a dramatic improvement for us. I think it's the best position we've been in with staffing since March of 2020. So definitely some light at the end of the tunnel. It seems that we're gaining traction and some improvement, and a lot of that success has been the CDL class that we were able to start in-house. Bus routes were released yesterday and are going to be for your approval at this month's board meeting. We typically get a lot of feedback this time of year, and it takes a few weeks of school to get the routes kind of ironed out, and students moving, and some buses get overcrowded, so it takes a little bit of time to get those exactly where we want them, but you'll see our original routes in front of you today. The other next 2 projects, the sport facility parking lots and Cecil Intermediate Carpet are both in the punch list phase. So that means the work is complete, the minor things that are left over we've identified, and the companies are coming back to finish those. Unfortunately for the support facility parking lots, we are currently using our bus barn as a holding storage area for our furniture for the middle school. So the new lot that we built for the vans is going to be used for buses in the meantime. That means the vans are going to remain down here, at least to start the school year, and then as we move furniture from the support facility to the new middle school, that will clear room up, we'll get the buses back where they belong, and the vans moved up.
Is that furniture coming in already?
So we have about 80% of the furniture for the middle school at our facility now. We're getting prepared to start moving some of that, hopefully in the next week, to the new middle school. We have designated a few areas that we can store furniture over there now. And also, a few of those areas are going to get punch list ready at the middle school very shortly, and the furniture will be moving into those areas. So, the very safe estimate, vans will be moved over winter break. Hopefully much earlier than that, but we're gonna go the safe route. I'll tell you guys winter break. Middle school, lights have arrived. We have over 90% of the lights. As you all know, they're about 3 months behind schedule. Once we got them on site, A1 tripled their crew on site and came in on a Saturday just to get the majority of those installed. So a lot of the classroom wing has the lights in, they're going in the rest of the building. That was a major stepping stone for us, a major delay. Changed our scope of work, our sequence of work. So now hopefully we just get back to our normal scheduled sequence and get the building completed. The focus of the work in the building now, the flooring the casework, painting is going on in a lot of areas of the building. Detail work in your HVAC, plumbing, and fiber line has started. So we're in the final stages of the project. We're pushing really hard. Like I said, we expect punch list items to be started next month, and that will be the second floor classroom wing. Is going to be the first area that's completed on punch list. So we're definitely moving along, and we'll meet our projected dates.
When can we do another walkthrough, Jordan?
So we're going to discuss tomorrow buildings and grounds, but we do have a tour scheduled for some central office staff on the 18th at 2 p.m. So we'd like to send that invitation, and if there's anyone that can't make that or would like to get over there at another time, I'm more than happy to make arrangements and get you over there. That's everything I have for you today.
Any questions for Jordan?
Yeah, Jordan, the gym floor done, completed?
High school gym floor?
Yes.
Yes.
Jordan, I had a question for you as far as transportation. Do you foresee us having the issue, like last school year with the sports transportation being an issue?
I don't anticipate having. I don't anticipate it. I've learned in the past 2 years to expect the unexpected. You know, it seems that when you have 1 or 2 or 3 people out, the 4th and 5th and 6th are also out that day. So obviously, if there were an occurrence where 7, 8, 10 drivers couldn't be at work on a specific day, I couldn't plan for that. I couldn't foresee that. So that occasion, we could have issues. But like I said, we over doubled our sub list. So I would anticipate we get everyone where they need to go this year.
Do you feel like you'll have another CDL class throughout the year?
Yeah, so we're going to continue. The 2 that got into the bus routes were van drivers, so that creates 2 voids in the van driver department. So we will advertise to get new candidates in for that. And then those seem to be the ones that gravitate to the CDL class and have the highest graduation rate. So we will continue the CDL class.
Any other questions for Jordan? All right, Tim?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna give a real brief update on staffing. On the professional side, we have 2 resignations, personnel sheets tonight for your review. We have 1 additional come in late today that will appear next week for your approval. It's too late to add for tonight. So we've already begun the interview process for backfilling those positions, and we're hoping that we'll have names for you for approval for next week. So on the support side, we have a head custodial retirement from the high school. We have a number of cafeteria postings that are live right now. They're going to create some activity within the cafeteria group, and once that all shakes out, we'll have those change of status approvals on for your approval next week. And we're also recruiting for a paraeducator resignation at the elementary level. We're going to be testing and interviewing at the end of this week and into the beginning of next week. So we're hoping we'll have a candidate for you next week as well. And that's what I've got. Any questions? We're busy, but we did a lot of our hiring earlier in the summer, so it's not as heavy as it normally is this time of year.
As long as we don't keep losing teachers.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Scott?
The pandemic team met last week, and we reviewed the health and safety plan and talked about any potential revisions for our current protocols. And as a result, we do have some recommendations for change. Health and safety plan will come on for your approval next week, and the flow chart was updated, and I passed that around for you guys to be able to see what I'm talking about. This coming school year, there's not a remote option available, so that was removed. The other thing the committee recommended was we consolidate, take our daily screeners and put those symptoms over on our flow chart for a one-stop shop. And we also rolled back the symptom-based exclusion aspect. Last year, if you were symptomatic, you would go into exclusion from school. If you tested positive, you would go into exclusion. Now, we are still excluding anybody who tests positive for 5 days at minimum. And if you are symptomatic, we are recommending you obviously stay home and test. And if you're negative, when your symptoms start to improve and you're fever-free, come back. Any questions on that? All right. The next thing I wanted to report on tonight is our comprehensive plan and associated plans. The state requires us to complete these every 3 years. So within the comp plan, there is the professional development plan, the gifted assurance plan, and the teacher induction plan. I shared with all of you the survey that we sent out to targeted stakeholders. Those recommendations came from any of you on the board, they came from administrators, they came via any of our active parent group leaders that we know of. We sent it to them. And it is also out on our website for review, and anyone from the public who wants to comment on it can do that through Morgan. So right now we're in a period of what's called the 28-day review and input phase. That will conclude prior to the voting meeting next week. The steering committee will take that information and see if there's anything we want to do and make some changes. So what you have on the agenda tonight are considered drafts. In addition to that, there's a stakeholder list that one aspect of one of the plans says the board must appoint certain stakeholders that fit certain areas, like a community member or a parent or something of that nature. So on that list, those folks have categories, so you'll see that, who they are, and we targeted them. And we sent them the survey that I shared with all of you. And all of you are more than welcome to also give your input through the survey. I checked it yesterday just to see how responses were coming in. Response rates is a little low, but it's CMEA, our Teachers Association, also plays a role. They were to give us names of teachers who wanted to have their input shared, and he just got that to me on Monday. So that was a pretty big group. So I'm hopeful that more input will come. And what I always tell parents or board members or administrators who have served on these type of committees before, it's a great vehicle to gain knowledge and information. And when it comes to comp plan, it's really narrow in regards of teaching and learning, but you can also gather a lot of input about a lot of other things. So the survey, as I'm looking at it, I see some other things coming up. Know that those things aren't like, oh my goodness, I didn't know this. These are, we had a lot of lists of strengths and challenges. Just because we don't put it in the comp plan doesn't mean we're not going to be working towards addressing those challenges. The comp plan is, like I said, really targeted to teaching and learning, and you've got to have certain components to it. For example, the last big comp plan we did, full day kindergarten, was it was overwhelming. That's what we wanted to do. It obviously couldn't be a comp plan goal because you have to complete it in 3 years. And here we are, 9 years later, and we're still waiting for capacity so we can do it. So that to say, if you didn't see something you thought was important being addressed in any of those plans, just reassure you that we are still looking at everything. Any questions on any of this? All right. The last thing I want to talk about is sort of personal, sort of professional. On the board agenda, you'll see a survey for research for Penn West University. So I'm completing my doctorate through Penn West, and you also know our efforts we are going to be making this year in regards to cyber school students and enrollment. And we've talked on a number of occasions on finding out, like, what are these families feelings about cyber school. Why are they there? Why did they leave us? Was there anything out there? So in the agenda, you'll see 2 instruments that I created. One's a survey that I'll send to every parent who has a cyber school child enrolled after the year starts. And the other is a parent interview that I'll conduct with any of those parents who are willing to garner that kind of information so we can utilize it in determining whether or not a cyber program for us is appropriate. So if you have any questions on that, today or tomorrow or whenever.
How many are enrolled in cyber right now?
Well, last year at one point in time, there were, 270. But there are a number of those students that go to magnet brick and mortar charters, so it had those in there. Some are at court ordered. When you boiled it down, about 230 at one point were at a cyber school. And we are getting some back. I don't know how many we've lost either. Right now, enrollment's real fluid. So when I looked at it this morning, we were a plus 66, but that changes every day. So not in cyber, but in overall, like how many kids have exited, how many have enrolled. So that's why the timing of the survey is so important. Once we start the year, I'll be reconciling those lists of names and finding out who's in still, who's newly enrolled, so we hit those families.
For me, what is it from like a grade perspective? Is it younger, older, mixed?
What we were seeing towards the end of last year was, and this is a very interesting, it's not surprising to me, but it was really interesting. 7 through 11 was the majority of children leaving mid-year to go to cyber. When I looked at that thing, there was only 1 senior who was in cyber. So those children, if they are in cyber, they're coming back for their senior year. That there are things that a cyber doesn't offer that is very important to these children their senior year. So I think we need to focus on that, look at those other aspects through all the other grade levels, and in the survey you'll see I try to gather that kind of information because I thought that was very interesting that the senior class was just 1.
So when they come back, do we test them to see if they've been taught properly, that they're going to go back into the grade that they're coming into?
There's no assessment given necessarily unless they're maybe a first time entering public school they've never been. We look at the transcripts and the grades that they earned while at cyber and then try to place them accordingly. And it is, I don't have hard data to say 80% of them have fallen behind, but the majority are in need of credit recovery or are currently failing and have come back to try to salvage and get credit. And that's why that's even more alarming that the majority are at the high school level, because those are, we know when students fall behind their peer group, they're become high risk of dropout. And we have great credit recovery programs. In the last 2 years, we have doubled and tripled the number of students that we're putting through those programs. We've waived the costs for them. We're transporting them. We're doing everything we can to try to get these students a diploma. And it doesn't help matters when you have large groups like that going to cyber and coming back further behind than when they left. And costing the taxpayers a lot of money.
Any questions for Scott? Morgan?
So we counted the votes for the Hall of Honor last week, and we'll be inducting 3 new members in September, and the invitations went out for that today. So you'll be able to see who will be inducted as well as that one tonight in September. And then I also attended the National School PR Association conference in Chicago last month. And I represented Kansas
maybe considering implementing, or something that other schools are doing that was interesting or eye-opening to you?
Yeah, so one of the things that stood out to me was that they said if you're a one-person PR team like I am, there were a lot of actual teams there that I was surprised about. And they said to focus on your strengths and what you feel you're really good at. And I feel like I'm really good at video, so I'm going to be doing a lot more video. I already put one out about the kindergarten orientation. I'm going to be doing a lot more video this year, so you'll see a video out there on our social media.
Any other questions for Morgan?
Morgan, you've done a great job. What you've been going through, this is posted, and the people were very, very helpful by it. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
That's that Mark, that's background noise. Hey Mark, can you mute your phone? Thank you. All right, Joni.
Alrighty. So I have a couple areas to report on tonight. Hopefully you can hear me. I can hear Scott and Jordan and Liz, and Joe. I really can't hear anybody else. If you have questions, one of those people should holler. We passed the budget on June 29th. The school district's deadline to pass the budget is June 30th. We know that Governor Wolf signed the budget on July 8th. So obviously I didn't have information available to share with all of you for final budget that was final numbers. They were estimates, they were projections using the best information that I had available to me. So I wanted to take the time tonight to bring you up to speed on what the differences were. Many schools around us didn't budget anything for an increase in state revenue because leading up to the vote, it was volatile on both sides. And so some districts didn't want to take the chance of adding revenue and then having to make up for it. I hedged, and I budgeted in large numbers. I banked on the governor and the legislature approving $350 million to basic education. They came in at $525 million. Now that's statewide, and we get our cut out of our piece of pie out of the formula. So I know all of you want to know, what does that mean to us? Well, what that means to us is that I was under budgeted in revenue, state revenue, by approximately $344,000. That number, I'm going to share with you why I'm not in shock. At the time we passed the budget, said if I was under, we would put it to our reserves, to our next projects, or some things that came with a cost in the final budget. Because when the governor signs a budget, there's something called the back end in there. There are different things that happen that have costs that I also didn't know when we passed the budget. There are unfunded mandates like Act 55, where we're required to do some things for special education. We know that inflation, fuel, placements, all those things came up, and I wasn't able to budget to the T. So a budget's a guide. Pete said that a while ago, and our guide is in place, and we know that we have a little bit of money on the other end, which is better for us. Special education funding, I was almost dead on. I budgeted that we would receive the $100 million in special ed funding that they would pass, and that was what was passed. When you broke out the formula, and I shared with you how complicated the formula is, it ended up being an $86,000 difference. But the one thing I want to caution everyone on, if you go onto PD's website and you pull up Canon-McMillan and you look at our percentage increases, you're going to see maybe a different percentage in terms of what I told you tonight in terms of dollar value. Because every year, I don't know what the budget's going to be, state budget, when we pass the budget. So every year, we're off a little bit. So the number from last year to this year, I didn't budget exactly what they had. So you need to take that into account, because theirs is more absolute. They're doing what they budgeted and what their increases were, because they're publishing it after the fact, where I don't have the luxury when we are passing a budget to know what those numbers are pretty close though. The other thing that came out of that state budget on July 8th was our Ready to Learn money stayed the same. And for us, that pays for a lot of tutoring and a lot of good things that we've done over the years with those monies. That stayed the same, so we didn't have to fund that with any general fund monies. They also secured some safety and security money through the Ready to Learn grant. And you're going to be hearing more from Scott, he's our safety coordinator, that we are eligible for up to $361,000 of safety and security money for physical safety and mental health safety. That grant is out there looming. That was something we didn't know about, so I didn't budget it. I actually did know that there was looming, but dollar amounts weren't thrown around beforehand. So that's an update of where we ended the year. And I move now into like what happens between like June we passed the budget and when do we start the next budget and what's happening. This is actually the busiest time of the year, the summer, for the business office, because we're caught in two different worlds. We're closing one year and we're starting another year all at the same time. So we're buying stuff in the new year, we're closing out purchase orders from the prior year, and our mission, our sole mission over the summer is to be prepared for when the auditors come in. The auditors will not come in if we do not have our books closed and have certain closing steps done for the year. So we work frantically to get that done, and our hope is when this last payroll is made here in a few days, that we'll be able to let the auditors know that we're ready for them, and I believe that we are on target. So once the auditors come, it consumes us because they're on site for a number of weeks, needing documentation. We're the focal point for all departments. They'll ask us for things for transportation. We'll reach out to Jordan. We're just the facilitator. So that really dominates the business office through the August and September months. October, then the auditors and our accountant hand documentation over to me, and I complete the annual financial reporting, which is one of the main roles that I have in the school district. And the beginning of that annual financial report is a management discussion letter. I take a lot of pride in the fact that ours is larger than most districts. It is more comprehensive. We get often applauded for it, but it's the way to read about the audit and the budget in layman's terms. So, and Michael and I work on that together. So that I will start, those are the things that I'll be working on while my group is finishing up. As soon as we finish the annual financial report in October, it's due October 31st, I move quickly, and that's when I actually physically begin to work on the budget and send templates out. I let the administrators know that, even though they may not get my email, if there's things that they need to get to me, their deadline's always December. And then when, usually, unfortunately, there's no choice. Between the Christmas break and Thanksgiving break, I try to get a draft preliminary budget together so that I can make a recommendation in January on what to do in terms of tax resolution. So that's sort of in a nutshell the process. When I set up the boardroom this morning, I was there. I have a handout for all of you with the budget timeline, but I didn't know that I wasn't going to be there this evening, so I have it for you next week. It's actually printed and sitting on my chair. But it's time for me to give you out the timeline. Liz was already up to speed with hers. But what I do is I color code for you where we are in the process so that you can move throughout the year with me and see where we are in the budget story and what our next steps are and our deadlines that we need to meet. So I'll have that for you for next week. The first thing that would have been highlighted this evening that I would have talked to you about is we're looking for the Act 1 index. It's legislature driven. So when that occurs, we will get notification. We have to get notified by September 30th. My organization did some preliminary calculations and believe it's going to be around 4%. So that's a little bit higher than we've had before in your ability if we need to raise taxes. So that is the next step, and then that January deadline is the next big target that we have. So what happens internally is, obviously we're extremely busy getting the audit and the annual financial report done, but I like to have a September budget and finance meeting. Ours is on September 6th, and that's where we start to delineate the budget priorities for the year, so that I build a budget that's, we've talked internally, administratively, about what those budget priorities could be. We then talk to the committee, and then we bring it back to the full board so that I have some guidelines in building that budget. Because if we don't have a framework and a guidance, then it's really the Wild West, and we won't really get things accomplished. Our long-range plans have been reliant on us having plans and processes in place. So at our September meeting, I'll kick that off. We often don't have an October meeting, but in November when the auditors report, then I start back, and then really after December, we pretty much have budget meetings every month. So the only other two things in the business office that are occurring is that one thing, I'm waiting for, I did my final interview, and I'm not sure I told all of you this. I did my final interview with the Auditor General, and I'm waiting for a draft report. When the draft report comes, I'll have a time period where Michael and I will be able to respond to it. It won't be public at that point. We're allowed to respond to correct factually incorrect items, and then they're going to publish it throughout the Commonwealth. So that, I honestly thought that I'd be reporting on that tonight. They told me the beginning of August, but I haven't received it yet. In terms of cafeteria, I attended the cafeteria opening meeting with our employees this week, and I thanked all of them for being in the room because, as Tim reported, we have 11 postings. Last year, we spent the entire year 7 staff down, which was a little bit easier operationally to deal with because we just did slash marks. This year, there has not been any mandate to make lunches free or reduced, so we're back to the lines, and they take longer to bring people in, bring our students in. So we did purchase with ESSER money some touchpads. Technology is doing their best to get those installed so that our cafeteria workers can more quickly get people through the lines. But I wanted to share and be transparent that I do have concerns with the staff shortages that we're seeing in cafeteria, with the supply line issues in terms of getting product, and then getting those touchpads in place, and just the change, everyone switching from thinking that they could just come through and we do a slash mark to having to go back to this other system. I do think there'll be some delay. So I wanted to just let everyone know, I told the cafeteria workers, stay strong, do their jobs. They did a great job last year because even though they were down 7 people, we had more kids than ever eat. So that meant they had to be putting out good products, even if those products ran out or they had to quickly pivot and produce new products. So I just want to be transparent about that. I think there is some nervousness because of both of those colliding, but I have faith that we'll be able to rise above it and get down what we need to do. Anyone knows any cafeteria people that are willing to work, send them our way, send them Tim's way. But other than that, I'm just excited to start another school year, and that's it. If you have any questions, let me know.
Should we do anything along the lines of finder's fee, bonuses, if we recommend people to get hired or anything to incentivize?
If you have a question, I can't do.
No, and Joni, I was just asking Tim if we have any type of program in place that if somebody recommends somebody and they get hired, that there's some sort of bonus for them or whatever to try and entice them to get people in.
We didn't put a program like that in place. We were able to turn transportation around with some just unique strategies, and Tim and Jordan have really gone outside the box, and Morgan's helped us, but unfortunately we just can't seem to have that same magic happen with cafeteria. Maybe something to consider. We could use budgetary reserve monies, but we don't have anything in place right now.
We may need to have some discussion about that process, especially the separation of the private sector, public sector. So maybe
It's something to potentially look at. We can't find some way to get that.
we must come up with some creative ideas, that's for sure. And I think Ms. Mansman did some creative advertising here tonight too, for workers, right? One thing I recall, I was in that meeting as well, and I recall, our food service director mentioning, not only are we short-staffed, but there's that supply line issue as well. So we can say, hey, we're having chicken next week, and well, we don't have chicken. So, we all just need to be aware that that could change, on a whim, because, well, we have to go with what we've got. Thank you.
Any questions for Joni? All right, moving on, Michael, recognition.
Yeah, we have a couple of items here. The middle school was ranked by the Pittsburgh Business Times top 15 for top scoring districts for 8th graders. And what that did was it kind of took into account 8th grade performance in the areas of English, science, and math. And they did some kind of formula, but it turned out really well for us. That's great. So congratulations to
Middle School. And there's a link there. You can read their whole story and the formula that they use to calculate this. And you can look at the entire list. It took into account a number of counties in southwestern Pennsylvania. So it's a really big deal. In addition, there's another link. You can read the full story about Karen Rubican, Pennsylvania Association for College Admission Counseling, announced her appointment as chair of the Secondary School Counseling Committee in her role as a school counselor in the Canon-McMillan School District and an active member of the Pennsylvania School Counselors Association. Karen brings a wealth of experience to this position. So congratulations go to her as well. Yes.
All right, next week's meeting will ask for approval on the June regular board meeting, the August 3rd meeting, and then tonight's meeting and tomorrow the buildings and grounds. I'm assuming we'll have those attached in there.
Yeah, those, whatever isn't completed at this point, they'll be ready for next week's agenda on the 17th.
All right, and then we will discuss or vote on bills for ratification for the month of July. We will look at approving the treasurer's report, and we will look at approving the wage tax reports. Any questions on any of those? All right, Michael.
The first item we'll have for your approval next week is the personnel sheets and the substitute list. And as Mr. McCullough explained, it's a moving target. You know, as of late today, we had another resignation, and who knows what happens between now and next week. But we can anticipate that not only will empty slots be filled in, but we'll be shuffling around some positions and names and what have you. We'll have that personnel sheet as complete as possible for your approval next week. Mr. Mayor explained about the school bus routes. That happens annually for your approval before we get started with the new school year. And those routes, by the way, are subject to change as needed throughout the course of the school year. And in addition, also on an annual basis at this time of year, we ask the board to approve travel for assistant superintendent, board members, local and out of state for conferences, as well as those related to the best interests of the school district. And that travel, by the way, would all be within the parameters of the budget. Federal grant applications, I don't know, Mr. Chambers, I think it is what it is. Those are our allocations. It's indicated there for Title I, Title II, and Title IV.
What about the one Jody was alluding to for the safety grant? Is that upcoming or?
So that opened August 1st, and it's due August 31st. It's the one 44 pages, the directions. So I started working on that earlier this week, and yes, $180,000 for physical, $180,000 for social emotional, and there likely could be like a possible board letter of support. I was seeing that has to be in there. So from your standpoint, that may be the only thing necessary. These three grants are separate from ESER, separate from the other. They are your traditional federal grants for those three types.
Thank you, Scott.
Next item is contracts, agreements, and proposals. And we have a number of them. There's an agreement first with Transformation Learning for the 2022-23 school year. That is our alternative education program. Sometimes we need an alternative source, and that's our go-to program. Also, Washington County MOU Transportation Agreement. This is a reciprocal agreement with Washington County Children and Youth Social Services and the school district to provide required transportation for students. The agreement with staffing. This is actually nursing services for the coming year. And the contracted carrier agreement. This is a specific parent transporting a child, and it's not unusual. Sometimes we find through an IEPT process that is an appropriate arrangement, and in this case, that is the case. There's also will be an agreement for next week with Presley Ridge. This is a special education private school placement, and then we have the Power School for applicant tracking module. That's for the full year, as well as PAeducator.net, and that's all through the Human Resources Department. And then last listed there is an agreement with the Watson Institute, and this again is a private special needs program. Next item is tuition students. We would ask that the board approve having a student attend the Trinity School District for their accounting program. It's a CTC recognized program, as well as a sports medicine program. These are students who have already been attending that program and moved into Canon-McMillan School District, and they're upperclassmen, and we will continue their program at Trinity through the end of the 22-23 school year. Next item is tax assessment appeals. The real estate committee met with council, and these were the appeals parcel identifiers indicated going into September. So we would ask for your August approval of those appeals. And the next one is tax assessment settlement appeals, and those are specifically listed by parcel, the next three items. And then we have a contracted carrier driver list. We do this because we ask the board to approve all of those carriers who we have providing transportation outside of employment with the school district or outside of the district control, like DMJ Transportation, Allegheny Medical Transport, Green's Taxi, Jake Snyder, and then again the two parent contracts as well. That is true, yeah. We're approving the list, and what we do in approving that list is also attest to the fact that all of the clearances are on file for audit purposes. That's an absolute requirement. The next couple of items, the comprehensive plan, the introduction plan, and then the professional plan, the gifted education plan, these are all part of that comprehensive piece that Mr. Chambers kind of reviewed for us. They're all on review right now, and by the time next voting meeting rolls around next week, they will have expired with their public review phase. The education stakeholders, item 6.14, is really just a list of all of the stakeholders who took part in the development of the plans.
I guess I tried to open that at home, but it wouldn't open up on our Excel. Anybody else have that? It opened for me. Did it open? Yeah.
When I tested it, when Brent after it opened for me too.
Maybe I can try it again.
Sheets, or is it?
It was actually in a
Legal sheets?
regular Excel sheet.
It opened in my legal sheets too, so.
You cannot create it or open it either?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see to it, you get a PDF, I can PDF that for you.
Yeah, I don't know why, man, I use Excel all the time.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That'll make it easier. The next item is the high school ATSI plan. I'm going to explain to you, I hate to have to ask the board to approve this because the high school originally was placed on ATSI because of subgroups and attendance and performance in some areas with special education students and what have you. But it was a 3-year plan, and they created action steps. They accomplished the goals. They're up to snuff, and they really could exit, and they should have exited, but the Department of Ed didn't have the proper protocol in place to allow the exit to occur. So they just find themselves having to stay in another year, and I hope that by the time this year ends, they will be formally able to exit. We'll be glad to allow that to happen. But regardless, they're in for another year. The plan is as it is, and it has action steps, and you can see your copy of that as provided. The next item is a survey, and Mr. Chambers mentioned that he's very personally involved in that, professionally as well. It's going to benefit the district, and we look forward to that. I will point out that we would ask that you approve this item to allow the surveys to be administered in the district per policy, but it would be pending the IRB approval because human subjects are involved, so that would happen. Next item is an easement agreement with West Penn Power, and this has to do with the new middle school site line. Well, let you talk about that.
Yeah, so this is the overhead power line we're running from the west corner of our property over to the turf field. So that's gonna be the power supply for the lights that we are putting on the field on that side. So the easement is 20 feet from the center of the line, so we can't have anything on 10 feet of either side of that, like a light pole or anything like that, which we don't. So it's just kind of a standard agreement for them to put the line in our property.
The next item, I hate to tell you about this one, although we've discussed it before, when the board authorized the business manager to approve bids through the summer. This is actually a retroactive approval for you, based on the fact that she did approve this, and it was necessary. It was the lowest bid to fix the boiler in the failed boiler in the current middle school. So we're still dumping money into that place. We have to, it has to be functional, but it was $28,912. And the board had actually allowed the administration to go forward not to exceed $30,000. So it was great that that fell within those parameters.
And it's all done, right?
Yes, it is. Right?
Well, the work's being completed right now, but we'll be ready for school.
Okay.
We were very fortunate, by the way. I think it may have been indicated, at least at the committee level, that those things are what, dated 1950s?
Yes,
And
they're very
we cannot find
obsolete.
parts.
Yeah.
But we were able to. I don't know what he did, worked some magic, and found a vendor that had it.
Size of this room.
Next item is change order for the support facility parking lots. This is really a deduct for unused allowances in the original cost of that project. That's good. And I believe that brings us to the end.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Any other items of information from anybody?
I know Liz wanted to go to different committee meetings, and we had like a conversation about whether who could not or go. I just wanted to know if I could go to the building and grounds meeting tomorrow at 10.
I don't think, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's,
Why not?
I mean, I won't be there, I'll be traveling, so you can take my place. So there won't be any net new. Anything else from anybody? Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Ernie, second.
Second.
Liz, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?